Into it. This is HBR News number 523, Young Republican Private Chat Leaks, RFK talks circumcision, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well this week and welcome back to Honey Badger Radio. I think I just got that mixed up. It's okay. It's fine. We have a great show lined up for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as in the comments section. On this week's HBR News, we're going to be looking at the recent Young Republican leaks that have been like making people's heads explode online. California gubernatorial candidate Katie Porker is apparently she's got a little bit of a history.
Did you do that on purpose?
No. I actually, I misspoke. Porter, not Porker. Porter.
No, we'll go with that.
Katie Porter.
This is how memes are created by serendipity. We're calling her Katie Porker now.
The Katie Porter thing is going to be really interesting because there is what a lot of people online have been talking about with regards to her, and then there's like something I found out thanks to some of the really great people in the men's issues space. And more. So stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show, where we're looking at this article from CNN. So, this is not like a fringe little thing. And apparently, guys, we are back, boys. After years of progress on gender, the male gaze is back. So
after years of being blind and just trying to focus our gaze entirely on troons. No, we've finally gone. I think we kind of prefer women. Sorry, not sorry.
So what was that?
I mean, against our better judgment, we do prefer looking at women, and we do hate them. We are all a bunch of misogynists, but for some reason, we find our eyes drifting in their direction, and for some reason, we can't quite help it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's like it's like God and our evolution have told us to do this.
Apparently, a lot of it has to do with Sydney Sweeney, but not only Sydney Sweeney. So don't let this photo trick you. But I'm hoping that what we're going to learn in this CNN opinion piece is that women are the ones that did this, and it's their fault. But obviously, we know that's not what it's going to be. It's going to be on men again, because the male gaze. You guys don't realize this. We're like the Medusa, like the Gorgon. We can stare at people and like change reality with the male gaze. So anyway, that'll be the patron show. If you want to be a part of that conversation, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com /subscribe to join us and watch all the additional content. For example, Mike and Allison just put out a super long, like Lord of the Rings length Ragening, and only the people who are members or subscribers can watch it. So if you guys want to check that out and all the other patron content, then go to feedthebadger.com /subscribe and set up a monthly subscription. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, then go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. That's where all of our content lives. Last thing I forgot to mention up front, it's just me and Mike today, so it's a pickle jar, because Hannah I don't think she can make it to the show, which is why she asked that we switch HBR Talk for HBR News this week.
It's optimistic of you to assume that you and I can fill a pickle jar between us. Well, and I've given myself an image that I didn't want there.
But people are saying it's going to be a half-hour long show. Well, I tend to be like pretty like short and sweet, because most of the opinions about the topics come out of the write-ups or the preparation that I do up front. But we do have 4 stories, and I think that they're even if the show is shorter than normal, I think that there's some stuff you guys could be discussing on these as well. So anyway, Hannah may show up. If she does, I will plug her voice in, because I control the audio, because I control women, and we won't know until she shows up. And maybe she'll show up and I won't let her talk, and I'll just keep her unplugged. I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, With
Hey,
all that
Lauren,
said, though,
Lauren, are you listening? If you're listening, Lauren, fucking jump in.
I mean, I could give Lauren Hannah's voice. I could, if she wants to. But anyway, with all that said, let us get into today's stories. So, all right. So Katie Porter, pictured here, not Porker, that was an accident, is a former U.S. Democratic representative from California and is currently running for governor against Gavin Newsom. She has long portrayed herself as a survivor of domestic violence from her ex-husband, Matthew Hoffman, whom she accused in 2013 of physical and verbal abuse, including grabbing her hand, screaming obscenities, and shattering a light switch during an argument while they were separated but still cohabitating. Porter secured a temporary restraining order against him, citing incidents that endangered her and her children, and she publicly shared her story during her 2018 congressional campaign to highlight her resilience as a single mother. However, Hoffman's reciprocal restraining order filing detailed counter allegations of Porter's abusive behavior, claiming that she routinely called him, her husband, or ex-husband, a fucking idiot and too fucking dumb to operate a cell phone. She threw toys, books, and other objects at him. She smashed the glass coffee pot in a rage over household cleanliness, which is ironic. And most sensationally, dumped a steaming bowl of mashed potatoes on his head in 2006, which burned his scalp, after berating him over cooking instructions while the toddler son watched. So with her son present, or their son present. These claims arose amid a contentious divorce finalized in 2014 with shared custody, and while Porter's campaign has dismissed Hoffman's accusations as a retaliatory tactic, later regretted by him, Hoffman reaffirmed in 2023 that he does not recant them, which fueled ongoing scrutiny of Porter's temperament amid separate reports of her allegedly toxic treatment of congressional staff, which you guys might recognize this woman from a viral video that was going around where she was basically, like, I guess, doing like a bit of a press interview or something, discussing policy ideas if she became governor of California. And one of her assistants walked into the shot, which is pictured here in the background, and she yelled at her. Did you see this clip when it was going around?
Yes, I did.
You are familiar with this? Okay. And this happened a couple times.
You think she'd be happy? You think she'd be happy to have other people in her shot, giving the impression that she has other people on her side, especially people who are there to kind of go, "Hey, Katie, you got this shit wrong about that thing. You might want to redo this because you said this shit that was wrong." So it's just and Katie Porter's way, in the absence of having a pound full of hot water and boiling water and potatoes to throw at this degenerate, she was like, "Fuck you! I don't fucking care. Get it. But I know you're correcting me, but you were in my shot anyway. It doesn't matter that you're correcting me. Like, I don't want people to know that I have staffers, even though everyone has staffers." So she just probably boiled some water on the spot and threw it on her. And yet, this idea that she just threw boiling potatoes on her, it almost certainly was boiling water with potatoes in it. Because this is what people are telling us, that it was just some fucking potatoes. But if there's potatoes there that are boiling enough to scald you, it's because they were in boiling water. Throwing boiling water on someone is an assault of the worst possible kind.
Oh, absolutely.
Disfigure you forever. Just we're given this picture that she just threw some mashed potato on his head. No, it was fucking boiling water with potatoes in it. She's a fucking psycho. Anyway.
Yeah. So somebody in the chat said they did not see the clip. So we're going to show it because I know Katie Porter from this other clip, but I learned that she is an abusive person, like just based on behaviors that she has done or exhibited. So let me show you the context for this screen grab here. This is I cut to the middle because it doesn't happen until about like towards the latter half. But this is her being asked, talking about like energy stuff, energy policy, and one of her interns or assistants walks into her shot here. Let me play this in her kitchen because she's trying to give this domestic, let's say a domesticated image.
An extra $632 in their pocket. And it's also not just the individual savings, but it's also the total savings for our economy. So I'm on the oversight committee, you might know, and that is where we did a study recently this fall in September. And what it showed is if we don't electrify our transportation sector, that we're going to lose more than 500,000 Californians dying prematurely to air pollution and other problems. And the state could lose. Get out of my fucking shot.
I wanted to tell you that that's actually incorrect. It's not that it's electric vehicles. It's that if we don't meet the commitments under the Paris Climate Accord.
Okay, it does. Okay, you also were in my shot before that.
All right. So that was the clip that went viral because of the way she acted. There was also another one where she was doing an interview with, I want to say, it was just CBS Sacramento, and she was extremely combative with the interviewer. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that. I'm trying to get you an idea of like this woman's personality type. So let's take a look at this. Okay. Like right here, I guess.
Sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA or you're from Oakland, you don't have an experience.
But you just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't
I
think
feel
you
like
need
this
them
is
to win.
unnecessarily argumentative. What is your question?
The question is the same thing I asked everybody, that this is being called the empowering voters to stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
Correct. And I said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
So she just like walks out. So these are very, like, essentially she wasn't getting like softball questions that were 100% behind her. They were just normal questions. They weren't even combative. The point is that she didn't receive that very well, and that was what her viral moment was. And I thought about covering that as a story because I thought maybe we can get into a little bit of like a discussion about like maybe, I don't know, women in politics or something, but I didn't think it was like a strong enough thing. And then I learned from a Twitter channel called #Men2 at The Real Men 2, which I think is Megan Fox's channel. I don't remember. Or Bettina Arndt. Yeah, okay. Welcome to the Arndt Army, championing Bettina Arndt's fight for fair treatment for men. And she basically, this woman, Katie Porter, is a champion of domestic violence survival, but she's clearly a violent person. And I'm not just extrapolating that from the interview clips. It's from when I learned that she poured hot mashed potatoes on her husband's head and gave him burns, like severely burning him. So this is she's been exposed as a perpetrator of domestic violence who dumped scalding mashed potatoes on her then husband's head. Her ex-husband, Matthew Hoffman, filed for divorce in 2013 and detailed that the Democrat frequently abused him verbally and threw toys, books, and other objects at him during their marriage. Hoffman also filed for a restraining order from his rage-prone spouse, claiming she would routinely call him a fucking idiot and fucking incompetent, and shattered a glass coffee pot in their kitchen counter in March 2012 when she felt that their house wasn't clean enough, which I don't think helps. She would not let me have a cell phone because she said, "You're too fucking dumb to operate it," Hoffman said of Porter, 51, who has been in the hot seat this week as videos capturing her going scorched earth and berating her former staff members made headlines. When she gets angry, she will claw and scratch her arms and then say to me, "Look what you made me do." So that's basically a little bit of like a level beyond what most people are talking about, right? They're sharing the little viral clips of her yelling at staff members and, like getting really combative with CBS reporters that are just trying to get her side of the story on something, getting an opinion, and she gets frustrated and she like storms out. So imagine if you're around the person like this all the time and you're married to this person. That's just what I thought was interesting. Plus, it's ironic that again, she portrays herself as a survivor of domestic violence. So anyway, that's what I want to share. What do you guys think about that? Mike, what do you think about this?
Stop the presses, folks. Career politicians are very often giant pieces of shit. I say I qualify that with very often, but I don't even think it's all that hyperbolic to say 100% of career politicians are giant pieces of shit. You might be thinking, well, surely there are some exceptions, like maybe one or two. There's a couple of them that I like. Well, I'll stop you there. There's a couple of career politicians whose closet you haven't yet scoured for skeletons because the opportunity hasn't yet presented itself. But it's surely the world's most ruthless, most cutthroat sector of employment, and it's
also the least meritocratic too, when you think about it, or at least one of them.
Unless the merit is that it necessarily self-selects for ruthless people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, any amount of ruth will leave you at a disadvantage over those who have zero ruth. And yeah, it's probably similar in all kinds of sectors. I mean, to climb to the top of any ladder, you'll need to shed yourself of as much ruth as possible, including, internet commentators and whatever. But it stands to reason that politics, i.e. the pursuit of absolute power, is the worst of the worst in this regard. You're not just dealing with people who want their voices heard. You're dealing with people who want the power to silence everyone else's voices. And that's why libertarians will never win against authoritarians in a democratic system.
Mm-hmm.
It's defense versus attack. It's a war between paper and scissors taking place in a factory that makes scissors. And fair enough, not all career politicians are necessarily nonces and murderers and thieves. Well, thieves, they all work for a glorified mob, so technically they are all thieves, as long as they're accepting wages made of blood money stolen from the people. But aside from that, they're not all criminals. They don't all murder their staffers to avoid those staffers from squealing about all the other staffers these politicians have already murdered, like a certain crime family who I don't think I could mention. But I would wager a pretty penny that they all treat their staffers like subhuman serfs on a regular basis, like we saw in that leaked clip of Katie Porker just now, viciously biting the hand that was trying to feed her. But I guarantee you they all do that. They wouldn't have got where they are today without doing that, without treating everyone around them as subordinate dogs' bodies, because that is their ambition, to rise to a station where everyone is their subordinate dogs' bodies. The more they present themselves as smiling, affable, peaceful, tolerant angels in public, the more you can be sure that they are tyrannical, demonic bastards behind the scenes. I'm sure Gavin Newsom is exactly the fucking same. It's simply an anomaly that in Katie Porker's case, we happened to catch a glimpse behind the scenes. We don't normally get such a glimpse. Whoever's responsible for leaking that clip has probably already been murdered. So yeah, to paraphrase a paraphrase of what I can only assume is ancient wisdom, the pathological craving for power should be an unequivocal disqualification for ever having power. And that is why democracy is fake and gay and cringe. Actually, those are the buzzwords we use. They are all euphemisms. What I should say is this is why democracy is an apocalyptic disaster, because it weeds out any possibility of benign rulers, leaving a flag that can only be captured by the most shameless and self-interested tormentors. It's why monarchy is a far superior system, because once the war is over, once the Game of Thrones is over, you get a system where leadership is not conquered but passed down hereditarily to someone who did not ask for it. And that's the point. This is well understood when it comes to jury duty. It's not a responsibility given to those who apply for it, to those who jockey for it, because then you'd always get a bunch of busybodies who think they have all the answers. It's jury duty is a responsibility given to those who are reluctant to accept it, because that's the closest we can get to impartiality. For the same reason, power should be passed down, not as a prize, but as a duty from father to son, or specifically from father to son, if you please. If you put women in charge, eventually you'll get some kind of disaster like democracy. And eventually democracy puts even more women in charge, and it all spirals downhill from there. And then you end up with the likes of Katie Porker, and only the likes of Katie Porker. Personally, I would rather have a king who pours boiling oil on his enemies and then claims victory than a queen who pours boiling water on her enemies and then claims victimhood. Because that's fucking backwards, isn't it? That way lies madness. Madness that never sleeps and never surfaces from hell. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. C.S. Lewis. You all know the quote by now. Well, take heed, for it is true. And yeah, the moral of the story is get yourself a king, America. You might as well make it Trump. Fuck it. And while you're at it,
maybe Baron Trump. Maybe
yes,
that. He'll be like a giant.
And
King of the Giants.
And the son of Baron and the son of the son of Baron.
Yes.
And while you're at it, can we have this dynasty too? Because our king is a dysgenic, inbred Islamist commie fuckface whose head belongs on a pike in the Tower of London. I said what I said.
You're saying this in London, right? Look out. Or in England,
from parts unknown in England.
Parts unknown, yeah. Well, hopefully they don't track you down. All right. So that was mainly the thing I wanted to say about it. Usually, again, it just shows the people who are the most vocal about this kind of stuff, like these feminists that are so like anti domestic abuse and they claim to be survivors. They're often offenders. This is why the statistic that most domestic violence is actually just like, bi-directional, like it's both parties engaging in it, is an important one to point out because feminists want to redefine domestic violence to only be wife beating. They literally said this. This is just another way of saying wife beating, which we know isn't true. That's not even looking at lesbians who just like, for them, it's fucking, UFC like all the time. But even in just regular heterosexual relationship, most of it is bi-directional. Both parties are engaged in it, and women initiate 70% of the time, according to data. So, and it looks like in this case, I mean, her husband probably got loud with her too, but she's claiming to be the victim here, and obviously she's got anger issues. So, all right. Anyway, with that said, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I'm going to read a super chow and then we're going to move on to the next story. If you guys want to send us a super chow, a super chat, or a Rumble rant, be sure to do so. I will read them in between each story. That's how I usually do it. So yeah, just go ahead and send it through. But I did get a super chow. You can send those by going to feedthebadger.com/just the tip. Meredith G, the G, gave us $5 and says, HBR new 523, honey for the Badgers. I know you meant to say news, but I'm going to read it as I see it. I'm like Ron Burgundy. I'm just going to read what it says on the teleprompter. Go fuck yourself, San Diego. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. Okay. This one's, there's a lot going on here, but we're going to try to unpack it. So in an October 9th, 2025 White House cabinet meeting, which was focused on health policy, U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. asserted that there are 2 studies that show children who are circumcised early have double the rate of autism, attributing the purported link to post-procedure administration of Tylenol for pain relief. Kennedy referenced a 2013 ecological study comparing circumcision rates across 8 countries with autism prevalence and a 2015 Danish cohort study of over 340,000 boys, which observed a higher autism diagnosis rate among circumcised males under age 5. He framed this as suggestive, so he wasn't making a claim. He was saying that it's suggestive evidence that warrants further scrutiny, or at least to look into it more, tying it to his broader unproven, or his broader campaign, not necessarily unproven, against Tylenol's role in neurodevelopmental disorders, including prior warnings to pregnant women alongside President Trump. He later defended his remarks on social media, citing an August 2025 preprint review that he claimed validated acetaminophen exposure, not the procedure itself, as the trigger, while accusing media of distortion. The claim drew swift, unanimous condemnation from various activists online claiming to be autism researchers, pediatricians, and advocacy groups, as they calling his claim pseudoscientific misinformation that stigmatizes autism and erodes trust in evidence-based medicine. Experts like Helen Tager Flusberg of Boston University labeled the cited studies appalling and riddled with flaws, noting their observational designs failed to establish causation and ignored co-founders such as cultural factors in diagnosis rates or parental healthcare access in religious communities practicing circumcision. The UK's National Autistic Society derided it as dangerous anti-science, while US physicians emphasized that Tylenol is rarely used post-circumcision and that broader reviews, including a 2024 analysis, found no link to autism or psychological harm. Online mockery proliferated, with critics highlighting Kennedy's pattern of fringe theories, from vaccines to now infant procedures, amid fears that it could deter routine care. But there's more to this than that. So, all right. Let's back up for a second. I just want to give my thoughts on this. It is possible also that circumcision itself causes autism or could contribute to autism, minus the Tylenol thing. The problem with this is that we've normalized the practice of circumcision to a degree that people are not likely to look at or examine the potential causal links. In fact, there aren't even really a lot of data on this at all, because in order to get the data, you would have to first think this is something that we should look into, and then you look into it. So I looked into some other things. I have here a study from PubMed Central, which I'm going to show you guys, which examines, this is from the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine, and it examines how, and again, this is also specific because it specifically describes ritual circumcision, but let's just say all circumcision, because I don't think a circumcision that takes place in a medical context versus a ritual context is any different. It's still cutting a piece off of a newborn baby penis, and that's basically that's the PTSD. That's where the problem is at, okay? And this was a cohort study done in Denmark. Now, the study, I'm going to dig it up here. I'll give you guys a summary of this. Let me see. I'm trying to find my research here. Okay. This cohort examined 342,877 boys born between the years 1994 and 2003. These were all recorded as undergoing a ritual circumcision. So I guess in this was in Denmark. most of these, according to this study, were Muslim circumcisions because Muslims perform
Is there any
circumcisions
other
as
kind
well.
There's surely very few circumcisions that aren't ritual.
Well, I
the-
mean, there's just like the thing is,
elective circumcision.
yeah,
which is when-
they're all
when-
they're not
when
for the
when
baby.
someone's
but-
old enough to elect.
oh, like
for
if
this
somebody
procedure.
says I want to do this, yeah.
like every circumcision performed on a baby is a ritual circumcision.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, but I'm just saying that you're right. All circumcisions done on newborns or on babies, regardless of whether they're done for religious reasons, cultural reasons, or medical reasons, they're all barbaric. It doesn't really matter, right? You take a kid, you can put him in like I don't know, like a cave in the Middle East and circumcise him, or a temple and circumcise him, or in a doctor's office and circumcise him. It's all the same. It just has a different backdrop. So yes, I agree with that. But I'm talking about the context of this particular, because again, there aren't a lot of studies done on this. There isn't a lot, at least not enough to like get anything really definitive because of a lot of obstacles to even looking into this, you know. And so like I have to look at what is available. So this study was shared around, and it is looking at Muslim circumcisions. But again, it doesn't really matter because the Jews do it, and it's the same shit, and doctors do it, and it's the same shit, okay? So the only difference is if you're a grown ass man, you're like, I want to get this done. Well, I don't know why you would, but like that's your business, right? So anyway, so we got a large sample study, and it found that those recorded as undergoing ritual circumcision, or just circumcision, had a 46% higher risk of autism spectrum disorder diagnosis by age 9, with a doubled risk for infantile autism before age 5. The study adjusted for factors like birth weight and maternal smoking. So, like in case there's other factors, like, pregnant women that drink or do drugs, but noted limitations, including incomplete circumcision data. So there were limits even on this data, and a small number of ASD cases among circumcised boys. The authors suggest that circumcision-related pain or stress might be the contributing factor to neurodevelopmental issues, but acknowledge the need for further research to confirm the hypothesis. And I want to also point out that when Robert F. Kennedy got a lot of shit for saying this, but when Kennedy said it, he said it was suggestive evidence and that it warrants further investigation. So he wasn't making a definitive claim. He was merely suggesting that circumcision or the use of Tylenol with circumcision or to treat the pain could be a factor. Now, I'm not expecting him to get up on a podium and declare circumcision to be banned, because the problem is that you still have to change the hearts and minds of regular people on this topic. And unfortunately, even a lot of so-called red pill guys think that, circumcision is okay because some women say they prefer it. And like, if you understand that women don't know what the fuck they want, you should ignore them anyway. But the point is that this isn't a popular talking point right now. It's the most common sense one to start from, for sure, but it's not at the point now where people are ready to hear it. And the other thing too is that anything that comes from the Trump administration is going to get rejected because it comes from the Trump administration. So there are going to be people who are going to go against it no matter what. Because remember, when RFK said there could be a link, to the pregnant women taking Tylenol, they probably shouldn't take it because it could affect your kids. And then Trump echoed that sentiment. And what happened? Women went on TikTok popping pills just to get the orange man. And we don't know if there's going to be any issues with that. But Tylenol themselves came out and said, please don't do that. We don't recommend this, right? So when you understand that it's not just that Robert F. Kennedy wasn't making a definitive claim, he was simply suggesting that there could be something here worth looking into, which B could lead us to discover that maybe the actual act of cutting a baby boy's genitals causes PTSD, which there is some data that suggests that, which could affect their ability to develop neurologically in the future, and it could affect them in a lot of other ways, right? And the only way we're going to get there is if there is more research done, more studies done on this, which RFK is calling for, right? He's saying we should investigate this further. We may discover something else. And of course, you get the experts, quote unquote, that step out and they're like, you can't, you're an idiot. You don't do this. This is pseudoscience, et cetera, et cetera. They probably got like, all the jabs and boosters, but whatever. They probably still wear masks, but yeah, we'll listen to them. And they don't even want to entertain this idea. And I'm basically telling you that there is like, we're seeing fragments of, data that if people follow this trajectory, if they take this path, we could find that maybe more and more people will be sympathetic to the idea that circumcision is a problem. And it's not really hard to get to the point where you say, to hell with, whatever your beliefs are, we're going to like ban this thing. And it's not something you're going to do overnight, but I think you can get there if we do this the right way, right? And we nudge people in the right direction. So anyway, so then there's I already mentioned PTSD, which babies will have in many cases as a result of circumcision. They will have memories of abuse without understanding where it came from. And it usually goes back to that. That is setting aside any actual complications with circumcision, which we know that this is something else that we've also acknowledged as a reality. So that's basically, I think that's everything I wanted to say about that one. So my final thoughts on this is that I hope that the Health and Human Services Committee or Department further investigates this, ignores the haters and the shouting lemmings on the side that just don't want them to succeed at anything, and just follow this through. And hopefully it will lead to more than just say asking women not to take Tylenol, or even like getting the developers of Tylenol to come up with some alternative that's not going to be harmful. But what I hope is that it leads to a conversation about circumcision itself, as whether or not it's a moral good. Because if you look online, they will still tell you the same bullshit about what the health benefits are. And the fact is that it's not proven. It doesn't prevent HIV. It doesn't make sex better for you. It doesn't make sex better for her. Who gives a shit what she wants? None of that's true. So let's just look at it for what it is. It is abusing children or boys specifically, by treating something that is what they were born with. It is God-given. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. I'll let you take it from here, Mike.
Yeah, it seems the suggestion being made is that it's trauma that causes or at least increases the likelihood of autism. It's not specifically circumcision. It's not as though there's something in the foreskin tissue that prevents children from becoming autistic. It's any kind of trauma that causes PTSD, because that's the T in PTSD. That's what can increase the likelihood of autism, and that's what we're driving at. I'm not even going to get into the Tylenol thing, because obviously Tylenol isn't a form of trauma. It's something that's biochemically based. I don't even understand how that works. But yeah, what makes it so difficult to attribute causation rather than correlation is prevalence, the prevalence of the procedure and the outcome. Take the thalidomide situation was pretty easy to pin down, because thalidomide was a novel and rather localized treatment, and children with those T-Rex arms were also a new and localized phenomenon, and the latter very much followed from the former. So people went, maybe it's not a coincidence that, ad hoc ergo propter hoc, after this, therefore because of this. So maybe we should take a deeper dive into the biochemical mechanisms taking place. A hop, skip, and a jump later, and it's, yes, we can confirm it's not just a coincidence. The correlation was what spurred us on to investigating this, and upon investigation, yes, we can confirm the thalidomide is what causes the T-Rex arms. Whoops-a-daisy, we won't make that mistake again. We'll make sure we never again jump headfirst into any novel experimental treatments that leave people severely medically compromised. Don't you worry, you sweet little cotton socks. We totally learned our lesson. Pinky swear. And yes, I'm sure you can all allude to what I'm alluding to, but let's get on to the main topic. Male genital mutilation is not rare, like thalidomide or its consequences were. Male genital mutilation is not a novel procedure that was only recently introduced. It's been practiced for a long time, even, should I say, especially in the USA. And it's more prominent than ever. More prominent than its absence is. Sadly, I should say. Well, scandalously, I should say. Autism is also more prominent than ever. Not more prominent than its absence, thankfully. And it too has been around for a long time. Autism's been around possibly forever. But its prominence, its rise in commonality, or at least the commonality of its diagnosis, is a recent phenomenon. But the fact that they're both so prominent now means that even though there's a huge area of overlap, there's also a huge area that doesn't overlap. There's like 100 million circumcised Americans and nowhere near that many autistic Americans, depending on the diagnosis. So all we can insinuate is an increased likelihood. And there's all manner of statistics that we can interpret as likelihoods, when all that really points to is a correlation with no real predictive properties. Perhaps what we should look for is what other properties are held in common by autism and male genital mutilation, because within those properties we might find the real culprit behind the causation. We might find the causation we're looking for. Personally, I have a hypothesis, a rather harebrained hypothesis about autism and its rise in prevalence in recent years, or at least the rise in the diagnosis of autism, especially its milder forms across the spectrum, like Asperger's and whatnot. Now, I'm not a real doctor. I don't know if I've explained this recently. None of this is medical advice, but I've noticed that a child, or indeed an adult, who would rather interact with a plasma screen than interact with a human being, or perhaps simply a child or an adult who interacts with screens more than they interact with humans, I'm sure a lot of you can relate, is often diagnosed with some form of autism. Just to be clear, I am skeptical of such a diagnosis, and I hope you can see why I'm so skeptical. We live in an age where children, and indeed adults, are surrounded by screens, TVs, computers, tablets, smartphones, all that jazz. And it's not just Saturday morning cartoons anymore, like it was in our day. And it's not just a handful of whatever Nintendo games your family could afford. Nowadays, parents can sit their children in front of this giant plasma screen with 24-hour-a-day Cocomelon on demand. They can hand their kids a cheap tablet with hundreds of free-to-download games, and they will never get bored. They'll never get frustrated with level 4-2 of Super Mario and then switch it off and go play outside. They'll never finish watching today's episode of Teletubbies and then have no choice but to look around the room and maybe interact with the real world, with the toys and the humans in the real world. Nowadays, kids can remain immersed in these screens all day, every day, very easily and for a very low price. And even to a layman like me, it seems kind of obvious that a child who listens to screens more than they listen to humans will likely grow up to listen to screens more than they listen to humans. And no, I am not saying this is autism. I'm not saying it causes autism. I'm not even calling it a disorder of any kind. I'm just saying it stands to reason that, like all creatures, we are creatures of habit, and we tend to stick to those habits. But these particular habits of being preoccupied with machine interfaces, these habits are sometimes, perhaps often, misdiagnosed as autism, especially, dare I say, in boys. Maybe in some way, boys are more, inclined to focus on clock faces than they are on human faces in ways that girls are not. I mean, this has also been studied, and it's kind of almost incontrovertibly true. We're looking for common properties, remember, common properties between autism diagnosis and male genital mutilation. Allowing your children to be raised by screens and the talking, flashing lights on those screens is a form of neglect. A mild form, but still. And I'm certainly not here to morally judge anyone, especially not parents, because I'm not a parent. And if I had children, I would almost certainly neglect them like crazy. And that's why I don't have children, and I never should. But it is what it is. Each successive generation has had more and more children who have been plonked in front of screens for hours on end every day because their parents, very often they're single parents, they're single mothers, let's be honest, can't be bothered interacting with them in person. Again, I'm not judging. I wouldn't want to interact with children all the time either. I completely understand why you would put them in front of the screen and let them drift off like zombies so you can sit back and relax for a couple of hours. I get it. I'm just saying that's what's happening. It's what has happened more and more with each successive generation over the last 60 years, ever since the popularity of the television and subsequently the computer. More and more parents have been afforded the opportunity to neglect their children. And this, I put it to you, has led to a greater prevalence in diagnoses of autism. Not necessarily actual autism, but maybe in some cases actual autism. I don't know, I'm not a real doctor. Again, I'm looking for common factors, and what I'm pointing to is child neglect. So what about male genital mutilation? Well, that would be an extreme manifestation of child neglect. That's when some quack doctor and his or her bunch of quack nurses who are trying to harvest human foreskins, they come up to you going, "Oh yes, absolutely, you should let us torture your newborn baby. It's perfectly safe and effective treatment for whatever bullshit lie we're making up this week, so we have an excuse to harvest baby foreskins. Just sign right here on the dotted line, it'll be fine. And please ignore the blood-curdling screams of your defenseless infant. It's fine. They really can't feel anything, and they won't remember anyway. And with any luck, neither will you." And the parents just go, "Yeah, that sounds perfectly plausible. Go ahead, doctor. You know what they say? Trust the science. Am I right?" Or even worse, the father will insist that his son be mutilated because he was mutilated too. Or even worse, the mother will insist that her son is mutilated because she simply prefers the aesthetics of a mutilated penis. At that point, it's such an extreme form of parental neglect that it's frankly a gross understatement to even call it neglect. It's abuse. It's cruelty and barbarism without remorse. That too, very unfortunately, is more prevalent than ever. So that's what I'm saying. That's the correlation that I'm drawing. What we are facing is an epidemic of child neglect, specifically male child neglect. A parent who will quite happily allow their son to be needlessly and torturously mutilated is also considerably more likely to go ahead and stick them in front of a screen and let someone else raise them for like 8 hours a day. Seems kind of obvious when you sound it out like that, doesn't it? So yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a layman. I'm not a real doctor. I don't have $250,000 of medical training. All I have is my 2 cents. And my 2 cents is this. If people simply got back to that old tried honored tradition of giving a shit about boys, you could fix this modern prevalence of the autism problem and the male genital mutilation problem in one fell swoop. I think they're both manifestations of this elusive problem that we in this esoteric corner of the internet like to call misandry. There's no telling how many of these mysterious issues that have cropped up in the modern day could be cleared up if we could at least acknowledge that misandry is in fact a thing, maybe even a thing in which people should not indulge. But according to Jerry Nadler, I'm just being anti-Semitic. I will deal with you later, you insidious goblin. To be continued.
All right, thank you for that, Mike. And again, I think that ultimately parenting will win the day, but unfortunately, the Department of Health and Human Services can't mandate that. It's got to come from parents, and that means that we got to do something about the relationship between men and women. Ultimately, although there are other factors as well, like because like I said, it's not just circumcision that is the issue. I do think there's PTSD. I think circumcision should be banned because it's the right thing to do, not mutilate your children, and I don't have to necessarily make an argument from consequences like here's how you'll benefit. It's just wrong to do that, and I agree with that. But I don't think it's going to necessarily solve the problem of increased rates of autism. I think there's parenting, there's food, there's stuff in the food, there's stuff in the water, there's the way that people, like the way that they understand that they should take care of themselves. Vaccines are probably a part of it too. Like, I think that it's okay to say this and it doesn't make you a terrible person. But anyway, I'm glad that this is on the table for discussion. I think that's like how everything else, this has to begin somewhere, and that's usually the best place to have that. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I'm going to move on to the next story. Okay, first though, I got a Rumble rant from OIC for $5. Thank you, OIC. And he says, my internet connection sucks right now. I will watch this later, have some rumblings. Well, thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Okay. So speaking of autism, we're going to be looking at this article or this story here from Politico, which has been making the rounds. So on October 14, 2025, Politico released an exclusive report which exposed over 2,900 pages of leaked Telegram chats spanning 7 months among members of the Young Republican chapters in states including New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont, revealing a torrent of racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, and violent rhetoric that shocked the political world.
2,900 pages. And,
yeah.
And all they could, I bet you all they could find was like...
Were just like a few things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. But that's the thing. Like, well, I'm going to get to it in a second, but let me finish what I wrote here. All right, participants, including high-ranking figures like the vice chair of the New York State Young Republicans and the chair of the Kansas chapter, freely used slurs against black, gay, Latino, and Asian people, referring to black individuals as monkeys or the watermelon people, while joking about gas chambers, mass rape of indigenous people, slavery's merits, and bombing their own conventions. One member quipped about praising Adolf Hitler, with others laughing along and expressing fears of a leak that could cook them, yet continuing unabated. The chats also included homophobic epithets, endorsements of pro-slavery Republicans, and discussions of driving rivals to suicide, painting a picture of unchecked extremism within the GOP's youth wing. The fallout was swift and bipartisan, with young Republican national federations demanding immediate resignations from all the folks involved, leading to the Kansas Young Republicans disbanding entirely, and several leaders, including New York's Bobby Walker, stepping down from roles amid job losses and public apologies laced with claims of context manipulation. Democratic leaders like the New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who's a piece of shit, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, oh my god, an even bigger piece of shit, weaponized the scandal against GOP figures such as Representative Elise Stefanik, tying her past endorsements to the chat participants, while Republicans from Stefanik to Vermont Governor Phil Scott condemned the vile and revolting content as antithetical to party values. Vice President J.D. Vance downplayed the outrage as pearl clutching over stupid jokes, yes, very based, urging leniency for young people while deflecting to a Democratic candidate's violent texts, but the leaks amplify broader concerns about pervasive bigotry and in the Republican base, especially as midterms approach, forcing soul searching and distancing across the aisle. So
pervasive. How the fuck is it pervasive when it's in private chats? Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We haven't gotten to it yet. Okay, first of all, yes, these are private chats. But here's the thing, and I can bring up Jay Jones, which I think is what I think it was J.D. Vance brought up Jay Jones. So like in the state of Virginia, there is a woman running for governor, and I only know this because I see fucking ads for her like every time I turn on YouTube. Her name is Spamberger, and she's I didn't know who was running and what side they were on because it was Spanberger, who's a woman, versus Winsome Earl Sears, who's also a woman. Of a black woman. And so you have like a woman Democrat, woman Republican. I was kind of indifferent, and then I learned, as things went on, that Spamberger is like a super far lefty, like crazy person. Okay, and it's funny because Winsome Earl Sears is a black woman, but she's more like based. Anyway, so she had a running partner, or another guy who's running for office named Jay Jones, and Jay Jones literally called for political assassinations of his opponents and their children. And he didn't take it back. And when Spamberger was pressed on it, like during the debate that she did with Winsome Earl Sears for the upcoming election for Virginia, she didn't respond to it. She had nothing to say, like deer in headlights, did not address it at all. Unfortunately, because a lot of people vote early in Virginia, Spamberger may win, but that's an aside, because the scandal didn't come out about Jay Jones calling for assassinations, basically after the Charlie Kirk thing, by the way. That it might be too late for that, but we'll see, because like obviously it's not over till it's over. So I call her, that's right. Zerang said for $5 super chat, says I call her Palpatine Spamberger. She literally said let the rage flow through you in a video I saw. Yeah, exactly. Do it. I can feel your anger, your hatred. So,
execute Order 66.
Good. Anyway, but so we have like actual people in positions of power calling for death and murder. And here's the thing: what I think is really under attack. First of all, let's just put it out there: what's going on here? This is just more of the same cancel culture shit the left's been doing since Gamergate, since before Gamergate probably, where they go into your history, they try to dig something up on you, and then they, cherry pick as much as they can, and then they put it out there, and then they try to use it to blast people. And the thing is, there is a lot of like people's getting their panties in a twist over it, but it's not as damning or destructive as I expected it to be, because what I've been seeing a lot lately are people posting on X saying, I don't care about some group chat leak sharing images of actual violent crimes happening to people. So I don't remember, this is a story where some guy got set on fire on a train Here is the guy who was stabbed to death at a track meet, right? Here's, well, everyone knows this one. And we have Charlie Kirk here. So these are, you know, and that's the thing, like saying mean things online, that doesn't compare to the actual violence in real world stuff. And this was private. And on top of that, here's the thing that I think is most important, okay? This is the way men talk to each other. That's all it is. Like when you're talking with your male friends or you're in a male space, men who don't feel like they're being monitored or surveilled by, you know, teachers or women or whatever, they feel that they can speak more freely, they speak their mind, it doesn't mean anything. Yes, some people will see that, you know, it rubs people the wrong way or whatever, but it doesn't matter. This is literally the way men communicate. And the truth is, this is only going to embolden them more. Like they're just not going to care. And that's kind of like where we're at, because essentially this entire dynamic, everything that's going on ever since social media, has been feminine-minded people trying to control the language, behavior, and speech of masculine-minded people. That's all it's been. That's like what it really, like when you boil it all the way down, that's what it was. Do you remember Candace Owens' social media autopsy that she almost put out? That was going to like supposedly get, like, it was basically digital ID for the internet, and it didn't work, right? But it was like, you know, like she was okay until that happened and no one ever forgave her, and they shouldn't. That should like haunt her for the rest of her life, because that is essentially a, you know, the female tyrannical mindset using social media to control the language and speech of men. And so if you can say shit like this, which I think is pretty mild, because if you think about it, if Politico was able to find like really bad things, that would be front and center. So the examples here are the worst examples they were able to find. It's just like the woman who walked through New York for 10 hours and, you know, we get the catcalling video that's like 3 minutes long. And most of it is like shit like hello and how are you and have a nice day, you know? So that's the best you can do. And that's why I'm saying, like, this is like, you know, just shit posting in a private space. I mean, like we get language like this in our own live chat. So I don't know like what the potential consequences of this are going to be. I think that there is definitely some cucked people that have already basically bent the knee on this stuff. But ultimately what needs to be recognized, and I think JD Vance does recognize this, is that this is just the way men talk. Like, remember when Trump got on the hot mic with Billy Bush and he said grab him by the pussy? This is that. They're just trying to get it at scale. So the only thing we have to do is reject it as like say, you know what? I don't give a shit because your people are killing our people and we're just talking shit. I mean, just frame it like that and it just falls into place. You got people running for office that want people dead and they're fretting about like people saying shit online. So anyway, that's all I got on that one, I think. So Mike, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I can only reiterate and to anticipate what a lot of our lefty friends slash opponents are going to be saying. It's along the lines of whoopah dapper. That's the noise I hear in my head whenever you say whataboutism. That's the noise you make whenever we point out your hypocrisy, as though your hypocrisy doesn't matter. But the fact that you people talk about equality, hypocrisy is anathema to equality. You know that, right? You can't be a hypocrite who advocates for equality, because hypocrisy is the opposite of equality. You know that, right? It's rules for me, but not for thee. That's how it's. So I'm going to try and weave my way around the Wubbadabba defense.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's intuitive to believe that the further you go behind closed doors, the closer you get to the truth. And yes, to some degree, that's true. But it's also true that the further you go behind closed doors, the spicier the jokes get. And indeed, the harder it gets to differentiate the jokes from the sincere statements. And it's very much the case here. I will happily say some spicy shit in our public live shows, and I'll say some even spicier shit in the after shows. and some even spicier shit in the private Discord chats. And to be honest, I'm not even sure how sincere I'm being half the time in any of these situations. But the point is, we temper our spicy shit depending on the size of the audience. If there's 1,000 people listening, including potential antagonists, we hold back.
Hide your
if there's-
power level, as it were.
Indeed. If there's only one person listening in like a private message, that we go, super Vindaloo spicy. Why? Because that presents the lowest possibility of our comments being leaked and taken out of context. And yes, they are always taken out of context. Compare this to our antagonists, to the people who very recently showed their ass to the world. I'm talking about the Charlie Kirk thing. They didn't just show their ass, they showed their fucking colon. They fucking goat-seed themselves in full view of the public. Yes, I want my enemies dead. I want their blood spilled in front of a crowd with their families watching, and that makes me a good person. And sure, maybe they're joking, but what speaks volumes is that they don't feel any burden to hide what they're saying. They don't temper their comments to the size of the audience they're talking to. If they could speak to all 8 billion people at once, they would gleefully declare their bloodlust. That they want straight white men exterminated en masse, and they're proud of it. They say these things because the education system has taught them that it's okay to say these things, because the mass media has taught them that it's okay to say these things. We tell our jokes about fucking Hitler and whatnot because we've been told that it's not okay. We know it's not okay. It's obvious that it's not okay, and that's why we say it. That's how dark humor works. We say these things because they are taboo, because they're naughty. For the same reason small children joke about farting and pooing, because they know that these things are naughty. That's the idea of the top end of naughty, because these things are supposed to be suppressed and underplayed and kept behind closed doors. We can all claim that we're joking when we say these things, but when leftists, quote unquote, joke about murdering rightists or just murdering men, especially white men, especially straight white cis men, they don't relegate them to private group chats. They declare them flagrantly all the way up to national fucking television, because they know there won't be any consequences. Even Jimmy Kimmel was only sacked for 4 fucking days before he came back. So for them to go hunting for spicy statements in the darkest annals of online private group chats is a game they can't lose. We could do the same. We could infiltrate the discords of the likes of Vosh and Destiny, looking for the most twisted things they say about fucking horses and buffaloes and their own children. And sometimes some of us do. And we reveal these things to the public. But it doesn't matter, because it's not even a revelation. They say exactly the same dark shit in full view of the public, and they get away with it. We live in a world in which leftists can say whatever the fuck they like on any platform anywhere, no matter how public or how popular. And all they get is a pat on the back and yet another government fucking subsidy. These motherfuckers can electrocute dogs and still get paid a king's fortune for doing it. If a young Republican so much as jokes about electrocuting a dog in a private conversation to themselves in their own fucking house, and if an eavesdropping neighbor happens to hear them saying it, they can get them thrown in a fucking jail cell in Britain. I mean, there's coming soon to America, of course. You're already on the slippery slope. Thankfully, you currently have an administration that is at least purporting to try and pull you out of that slippery slope. And yeah, best of luck with that. But yeah, fuck's sake, man, the naked gall on these dickheads to lecture us about unacceptable language. Eat a fucking barrel of dicks already. Can I get away with a how dare you? I'm going to do it. How dare you? How dare you? There, I said it, and I'll do it again.
There you
Bunch of
yeah, I mean, like, what is hashtag kill all men, right? So that's like the mildest version. I mean, and again, they have actually killed people. So yeah, miss me with that bullshit. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. I look forward to your thoughts on this story because it is kind of like a test of your ability to be like, you know what, I don't really care. And I don't, personally. I don't give a shit about words. I mean, like, I got into this mess, like, you know, because I didn't give a shit about words. So we're going to move on to the next one. In other news that broke while we were doing our show, Ace Frehley of Kiss has passed away at 74. And so this wasn't a story I had picked out. I don't know if he's got any quotes, Mike. I'm not even sure if you're a Kiss guy. I mean, they're okay, I guess. They're not as hardcore as they look. So, but yeah, Ace Frehley has passed away. If you enjoyed Kiss, that may matter to you. So, I thought I would share that.
Yeah,
Mike's got nothing.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it just happened. I just learned about it like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I certainly didn't have time to find any quotes about it. I was never a Kiss guy, and I can't imagine finding many quotes. By Ace. He was the guitarist, right?
Yeah, he was the guitarist. Arguably the most talented member of the band, I guess. But yeah, I don't, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter. All it means to me is that I'm getting old because all of the people that I grew up with are dying. That's all. Yes. Like, you know who else passed away is Drew Struzan, who, this is a couple days ago. Nobody even, like, I don't even know people know who Drew Struzan is, but Drew Struzan was a illustrator that made, he painted movie posters back when we used to have people paint them before we used Photoshop and shit. And he was very, very famously made like the posters for Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, basically like all the big ones, you know, all the ones that you know it when you see it. Big Trouble Little China, The Thing, that was all Drew Struzan. Very, very, very famous illustrator, did a lot of really good work. He's kind of like the John Williams of illustrators. If John Williams is known for doing movie scores, Drew Struzan was the guy who did illustrations for posters and films. So very good, very talented guy. So yeah, also died. So, you know, I'm just like all of my heroes are growing old and dying, and it just paints a number on your forehead that you have to look at every morning. So anyway,
that's how you know when you're getting old, man.
That's how you know. Yeah, all your heroes dying off, right? But yeah. Anyway, R.I.P. To this guy, and
I'm sure he was a very nice fella.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. All right. Anyway, Ace Frehley. Let's move on to the last story. So this one I learned about it like Vernon Meek says Struzan was excellent, stark contrast to the cheap minimalist posters of today. Yes, he was great. Farabi says Love Gun was the first LP I ever bought. You know what the Love Gun is? It's their dicks. So anyway, so yeah, let me know what you guys think. You have any particular work by Ace Frehley or Drew Struzan that you want to remark on? Put it in the comments. Anyway, so I learned about this one just this morning, so I added it kind of last minute. I normally do the stories the day before, and I heard this and I thought it was so upsetting I had to add this. So you guys remember Big Balls, Edward Korstein, who worked for Doge under Elon Musk, and that he was brutally assaulted by a group of teenagers during an attempted carjacking in a Washington, D.C. parking garage. near U Street, just a mile from the White House. Korstein interviewed to stop the theft of a woman's car around 3 a.m. We learned that it was his girlfriend, so it wasn't like a random woman. I guess they were together when this happened. Suffered severe injuries, including a broken jaw, fractured eye socket, and deep lacerations requiring stitches and surgery after being punched, kicked, and stomped by up to 10 assailants. 10 people. 10 teens. 10 youths. The incident, captured on video and shared widely by Korstein himself, so they had video evidence of this, drew national outrage and President Trump's personal attention, who posted graphic images on Truth Social, decried DC's crime wave, and deployed National Guard troops to federalize parts of the city despite declining overall crime stats, according to the city. But of course, the DC crime stats are not low. It's a terrible, terrible crime-ridden city. And it was actually the assault on Big Balls that was the final straw that I believe caused Trump to go with the National Guard troops and federalize parts of the city. Two 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl from Hattsville, Maryland, were arrested and charged with attempted robbery, simple assault, and for the boy, additional felony assault and robbery from a separate gas station attack. Because they are underage, their names and identities are not being shared, okay? They were detained at DC's Youth Services Center until an August release on strict conditions like electronic monitoring and curfew. So there was a court hearing on October 15th, yesterday. Biden appointed Associate Judge Kendra D. Briggs, pictured here, sentenced the teens to probation and community service after they pleaded guilty to simple assault, emphasizing rehabilitation over punishment for the younger people who decided to basically terrorize U Street. The judge barred them from DC except for court or treatment, with the boy facing ongoing charges for the gas station incident. 8 other alleged accomplices remain at large. The lenient verdict ignited a firestorm from Trump, who called it terrible and shamed the judge in the Oval Office, and Elon Musk, who branded it a racist verdict by a racist judge on X. Because they were black teens that received a probation, while a race reverse scenario would probably yield prison time. Claims amplified by MAGA influencers like Libs of TikTok and the MAGA Voice are garnering millions of views and calls for Briggs's disbarment. Korstein expressed disappointment but urged focus on broader DC safety, highlighting the attack's role in Trump's crime crackdown amid partisan clashes over judicial equity. So this is like interesting because, let's just face it, okay? A lot of these activist judges are very lenient to the right people for certain reasons. They always see this as an opportunity. I think there's just straight up tribalism going on here, but maybe it's just me. This is a Biden appointed judge in Washington, D.C., which is despite it being the capital, it's one of the most corrupt cities in terms of its government in the country. Not quite as bad as Chicago, but it's one of the worst. And she gave them a slap on the wrist. And if you saw the pictures of Big Balls, it was brutal. Like, he was in the hospital. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to share that story. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, or if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, their crime wasn't even aggravated. Big Balls tried to prevent another crime, and they fucked him up for trying to prevent another crime. It wasn't as though he yelled the N-word. Not that would even be an excuse. I know that's the excuse that's so often given every time a bunch of N-words beat the shit out of a white person. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's pretty cut and dry that these were criminals in the act of a crime who then committed another crime against someone who tried to prevent that crime. Like, they would have done the same thing to a police officer if there were any police officers in DC who were even interested in addressing these kind of crimes as they actually happened. And this was why Trump had to send the fucking military in. And then it all culminates in the decisions of a black judge. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be black judges. A lot of people like to say it's genetic.
Mhm.
and that's up in the air. I know it's even controversial to call it up in the air, but I'm not sure I really want to conclude that it's genetic until I see an experiment that doesn't involve victim mentality. Such an experiment has never taken place in America, at least not since the Jim Crow era. Actually, I guess the victim mentality was implemented in the Jim Crow era, um, but back in the early 20th century, black families were just as together as white families, more so, if anything, and it's largely because of the absence of this victim mentality. And I know people like to attribute this low impulse control to persons of African descent. And but I would attribute this low impulse control to any demographic of people who've been brain scrambled by victim mentality. And it's hard to find an experiment involving black people that haven't been brain scrambled by this victim mentality. And you could look to Africa, yes, there's and how countries in Africa led entirely by black people haven't done all that well. But then you have to wonder to what degree this victim mentality has been brain scrambled into them by these post-colonial liberals who have convinced them that they could totally run their own country, even though countries didn't exist in Africa until white people colonized it and tried to civilize it. And I'm not saying that was necessarily a good idea. Like this idea of white colonialism. The biggest mistake they made was to think that they could make African people just like European people. No, it was never possible. A great deal of African people see time backwards, in the same way European people think of time as forwards. A great deal of African people see time as going backwards, and it's a complicated. You'll have seen interpretations of this a lot. Yeah, we're not the same. There's small things that make us not the same genetically, but I don't know how significant they are, and I don't know how we can scientifically, empirically, I mean, really draw the differences until we can actually refrain from teaching black people that they are victims of everything, especially of white people. I want to see that experiment, and I don't think we're going to see it in America anytime soon, or anywhere anytime soon, because we're all being ruled by these oikophobic leftists who are just hell bent on teaching black people and women, and especially black women, that they are victims. And so obviously a black female judge is going to be biased, especially if she's been through the American education system, especially the American higher education system, where they are taught, indeed brainwashed, to believe that if any black person is ever accused of a crime, then it must be because white men, especially orange men, are affecting this in some way. And again, it's not just lack of education. This judge has obviously been through the ringers of the education system. So I'm not saying black people shouldn't be judges. I'm saying perhaps there should be some kind of moratorium. There needs to be an overhaul of the education system, where people perhaps refrain from telling black people that they're all necessarily victims, no matter what they do. And until then, I don't know how we can trust quote unquote minority judges or quote unquote minority juries from being objective in any way. The only people you can trust to be objective are people who don't have any kind of in-group prejudice whatsoever. I know it's perfectly natural for anyone and everyone to have in-group bias, and that makes it quite difficult to produce a judge or a jury that's truly unbiased. But in the meantime, we should look to people who don't have in-group bias. And when you look at the statistics, nowadays, the only people whose opinions and decisions are not directed by in-group bias are white people. In fact, white people have out-group bias, if anything, and that doesn't make them any less biased. In fact, they are biased against their own people. I just want a demographic of people who can be unbiased, and I know that's not going to happen. But we're stuck in this weird situation where white people hate their own people, and everyone else hates white people. So how the fuck are we supposed to find unbiased people to be juries, let alone judges? It's a shite state of affairs, and I don't know how the fuck we get out of it other than by gutting the education system and the mass media. And I hope that's what Trump's doing, because that's what needs to be done. Let's replace everyone with orange people, because to be honest, we've had a good track record with orange people so far. Let's make everyone orange.
All right.
This is not an advertisement for Orange Coin. I don't even know what that is.
Is that a thing? It could be a thing.
Apparently, I don't know. Just don't buy Orange Coin. Don't buy any coin. It's all bollocks.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's the story. Sad. So glad it's not happening. But we are now going to go into the patron show, and look at that, right on time too. A regular length show. How about that? So
we managed it without Hannah. Yeah.
Without Hannah. Could you imagine? I probably wouldn't have done the Ace Frehley story, if anything. So there you go. But
we're just filling in time. It's not it's not Hannah that makes these things long. It's we can make it long without Hannah. We don't need to.
That's true. All right, but anyway, so we're gonna go into the patron show now, and we're gonna look at this. After years of progress on gender, the male gaze is back, boys. We're back. And we're going to find out what it is CNN is getting at. And hopefully we'll see you guys there. Again, that's feedthebadger.com/subscribe to join our Discord and watch the additional content. And if you give it higher levels, you can hang out with us in the Discord and talk to us directly. Give us a piece of your mind or whatever. So... but yeah, with that said, I want to thank Mike for joining me on the show. I want to thank you guys most of all for watching. And I hope that, Hannah is doing well wherever she is. I'm pretty sure she had to go work her other job. So with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, and let us know what you guys think about what we discussed in the show today. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next one. See you next Tuesday.
Cunt.
Yes.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.